Here we go, henna. Okay. Time for e5, I think. Get a Italian game, maybe. Oh, 4 knights. Okay, we'll do the 4 knights. Italian, Scotch, and Marie Lopez are the most common openings, but the 4 knights is still a respectable way to play. So this is called the Scotch 4 knights. I don't know much more about it than that. But yeah, it's doing the 4 knights and then playing the Scotch. If I take and he pushes, is that a problem? I think I'll take with the knight, because then he will have to move his knight here, so, or take the pawn. That gives me a second to prepare to protect my knight here. Maybe we should look at this after the game and see what you're supposed to play. So I'm just going to get castled. Looks like he's developing very quickly, but he doesn't have a knight on the king's side to join in the attack with this bishop, so I don't see a problem here at this point. And the point of this pawn move, when I pushed it from d7 to d6, was to give me a way to, not have to worry about this knight here being pushed away, because it's really a good square for the knight. And, if he wants to trade his bishop for my knight, that would be fine too. He doesn't. So I can go here. Can I? No, I can't go here. So the question is where to put the light squared bishop. Should I try and fianchetto it? That seems like it would create weaknesses on the queen side. Could wander to d7 and then c6 maybe. Try and put pressure on the center with that bishop. Just didn't seem that this square would be very stable for it, and here it'd just get traded off. Although maybe that's not bad, Maybe it's not bad at all. Okay, I've got 2 pieces on this. Oh, he defends it. But now he's got a weakness here he has to be aware of, worry about. So, for example, I could play, he was aware of that. I was going to say I could play d5 with tempo here, because I would have bishop to c5, pinning and winning the queen. Yeah, it looks like he's planning to double up on the D file here. Let's go ahead and resolve this, see where he wants to go with his bishop. It also gets my queen off the D file. If he lines up all his pieces there, it might have gotten uncomfortable for me. He could have just retreated his bishop. He could have retreated all the way back to here. I don't know if that's particularly good. So he changes tack. This looks like an interesting square over here. Not sure why he pre-moved. He pre-moved that pawn. He was moving too fast this whole game. Anyway, let's go to the analysis board for just a second here. I'm curious about the opening. So Yeah, so this is called the Four Knights, and you can play the Four Knights Italian game or the Four Knights Scotch game. There may be other moves, but it looks like this is the favored move. Now, one question is, should I take with the pawn or the knight? I took with the knight. It says taking with the pawn is fine. And what if he pushes? Oh, well, once again, I'm hitting his knight, so that's probably not so good. Yeah, it's good for black. So he's not going to push right away, so you can just take with the pawn. Taking with the knight is not as good. Looks like this gives white an advantage. Okay, so remember that for next time. Take with the pawn. And queen takes is the best move, so he knows his opening theory up to this point. And then I played d6. D6 is recommended by the chess engine. So it is important to, prevent this pawn from displacing this knight. I just had to realize that he couldn't do it until he'd somehow dealt with the threat to his knight first. But once this becomes a threat, you want to deal with it. And then he should play bishop f4, bring that out, and instead he went with this bishop. And from here on, we've got, I think, a fairly normal game. Okay, that's what I wanted to check. Let's see if we can get a rapid game here. Okay, my turn. I haven't played knight f3 in a long time in this series, so let's go with that. He responds in kind. Gonna play c4. The Reti gambit is sometimes played, where he responds immediately with d5 and then he plays c4. So what I'm going to do here is actually fianchetto my queenside bishop first, keeping on with the Reti theme. I mean, obviously we've transposed into a symmetrical English at this point, and the move in the symmetrical English would have been G3 here and develop this bishop. But I want to keep kind of a Reti flavor to the position, so I'm going to fianchetto this bishop first. See if he has a way to take advantage of it. I mean, one feature of these English and Reti type openings is they're kind of slow developing often, so unless you find a weird gambit line. So anyway, you have time to arrange your pieces, and so you don't have to worry too much about sudden discoveries. Yeah, I think we'll get a double fianchetto here. You don't have to worry about suddenly getting caught in a tactical trap so much. You still have to be aware, but okay, he wants to trade off that pawn. Or does he want to? Maybe he just wants to push his pawn forward. Probably the best move here is to take and play d5 or just play d5 immediately. Because letting him take over the center, even after I trade, he's still threatening to push this pawn, which is kind of annoying. How about I could play d3 if I wanted to not just go into a queen's pawn opening. Let's see, e3, pawn to e3, he plays d5, I take, he takes, and then I need to find a way to get more pressure on it because I've only got two pieces attacking and he's got two pieces defending. Yeah, I think I should go with just transposing into a queen's pawn style opening. I think that's the best thing to do. I mean, that's a feature of this knight f3 opening move, is it can transpose into a lot of different openings. So I think it was Kramnik. There was some grandmaster who used this a lot. He would basically use a queen's pawn player, but he would often start off with this knight f3 move to get into certain lines of the queen's pawn openings that he liked better. So So now we've got a isolated queen's pawn position. Interesting. I wasn't really expecting him to take. A lot of times they'll just leave the tension there, wait for me to take, and then they get a free developing move taking back. You know, when I had a pawn here. So he's adding to the pressure on this knight, but it's not a problem yet. Two attackers, two defenders. Let's continue developing. Knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and I've still got pressure on the isolated pawn. At some point I will have to play e3, I think, to shore up the center. But I thought, well, let's continue developing at this stage. Yeah, let's even get in the castle. I like that idea of castling. What next? Any developing move with this knight hangs this knight. So the next move is to defend this knight, I think. So now I can safely develop this knight somewhere, probably here to here, and then rook here, threatening to take this guy. These seem to be the things to do. The isolated queen's pawn isn't going anywhere, so you just have to keep it restrained. And then later on, after the minor pieces are gone and you just have heavy pieces, you can sometimes just win that pawn. But while the minor pieces are on board, you should try and be active with them. Can't just trade them off. I don't think it's a good strategy simply to trade for the sake of trading in this situation. Okay, so now actually, I think still the knight here is the good move. He eliminated one of my ideas by trading off this knight, so I no longer had the idea of taking with the knight here and with the rook pressuring this backwards pawn on c6. So, but that's okay. I can pressure his bishop as much as I like. I don't think I'll be in a hurry to do this, especially if he plays something like a6. The knight here and the bishop could just drop back, stay on this diagonal. So I think rather than doing the knight move right away, I'll probably do here. On the other hand, if he doesn't play a6, knight here might be good. Yeah, knight here, bishop to c7, I guess. Camilo Bono. No idea. So he's thinking about this one. He decided to trade his bishop. Okay. So now I have knight to c5 as an idea, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn. But again, it's probably better to bring the rook to the c file first. Okay, and he takes control of that square anyway. His knight may be hopping into his knight may be hopping into D or E4 at some point, this square. At the moment I can take and win a pawn. This bishop could win a pawn back though, so actually it's not so great. So let's think. We've got I've got a light squared bishop. Got 3 pieces attacking this pawn. He's got his light squared bishop defending it. So it's a pretty passive role for it. I think maybe there might be some tactic here if I get some pressure on this file. Yeah, there could be a pin there, for example. If I were to put a rook here, let's erase some of these lines, put a rook here, move this queen out of the way, and I could probably just take this pawn, because when he takes back, I could push this pawn forward and attack the pinned piece. Well, he's got his knight here. I have to be careful of that. Maybe that doesn't actually win material. It's an idea, though, something to keep in mind. Let's see. Queen over here would have attacked that pawn. Why did he play there? What is that? Is that a mistake? Let's give him a second to see if he takes it back. I mean, he left... Oh, no, this is not hanging. But I wonder if it's a mistake anyway, because I could put the knight here, and if he pushes forward, then I get the knight on this perch, which is where I wanted it. I think it's more important to do that than to bring a rook to the center, which would be the other move I was considering. Trying to set up tactics along here, or just prepare for the long-term siege of the isolated queen's pawn. So, you know, there was probably something even simpler here. Oh no, I needed to clear that file first. After he played a6. I was thinking, I just take his rook, queen takes back, and then this pawn is hanging. But that's not true for 2 reasons. One was, this file wasn't clear, so I couldn't take the rook yet. And secondly, he could always take with the bishop. So I can't displace the queen. But I am threatening to take here now, so he's got to decide if he wants to defend it or not. So I think that's a good intermediate move. Let's take back. Okay, so he's not defending that pawn. Was he not aware that it was hanging? Is he making a counter threat? Or did he just make a mistake? Queen takes would release the blockade on this pawn, but if he pushes it forward, the queen would just take back. So I could take, he trades queens, and my knight ends up here. He could attack the knight, but the knight can always go back here. I think queen takes is the way to go. Then I would have two isolated pawns for targets, and I'd be a pawn up. You know, if he decides to trade go into the endgame, as long as I'm not immediately losing anything. Okay, so he's hitting the rook, and he's hitting this pawn. So we defend the pawn. If he opposes rooks, I would take with check. He takes back. And my queen could come in here with check, and he would have to bring his queen back to defend. So I don't believe he can oppose rooks, even though it looks like the bishop is supporting the rook there. If you follow that sequence through, it looks like I just end up in a good end game. Okay, so he goes there. I want to go to a square that defends the knight, but at the same time, there's another pawn hanging here. Do I have a much better move somewhere? Maybe I should just come back here. Now I'm actually threatening to take this pawn again. Well, I shouldn't say again. This is actually the first time I've really threatened to take that pawn. The theme up until now has been blockading it and putting pressure on it. So he comes back to defend. I could put the knight here. Knight takes, rook takes. His queen is unprotected there, isn't it? Which means there's a pin. So I could play this pawn forward and he can't take it. He defends. I take the pawn. He takes back. I take. Eventually there's a problem with yeah, let's just connect up like this. Just simply threaten to take directly. I was worried eventually that if this file opens up, that rook would come back here and check, and I'd be forced to bring my bishop back to stop the check. And then the bishop would be pinned here, and he'd still, if he had a light squared bishop, or anyway, he might still be able to exploit the pin somehow. So that's why I was reluctant to play pawn forward immediately. It looks like maybe I'm winning this pawn anyway, though, because it seems like I can just put more pressure on him than he can. Can bring his knight around to defend, put the knight back on this square. Be 3 defenders, 3 attackers. I can bring my knight here. He can bring his rook over, and I push the pawn. If he takes, I take the queen. Queen is defended with the rook, but I can take back with the rook, so I win a piece. I win a rook, actually. If he doesn't take the pawn, then I could take knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, queen takes. Yeah, I just overpower him on that square. Okay, now that's an interesting move because now he really is threatening to come in here, check my king. So let's drop back and defend the back rank. Okay, now he defends. So now if I push this pawn forward and he takes, his queen hangs. If he takes the pawn with the knight, I take back and he's down a piece. If he comes in here, I'll just take, attacking his bishop. Bishop takes, knight takes. Oh, maybe I'll go here first. So 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I would like to just cleanly win the pawn without having to, give up anything. And it looks like, he's been thinking about his moves, which is good. That's what you're supposed to do in a rapid game. But now looks like his time is getting low. By rapid, I mean, as compared to Blitz, you have considerably more time. You really should try and use it. But he's used all his time when we're only on move 25. So maybe he was a little too... that's an interesting move, though. But I think this is one of those cases where I can... well, if I kick the bishop back, then I'm actually blocking my... blocking my view. Okay, shift the rook to this file for now. I would be, if I put it here, he could just drop his bishop back and defend, and my bishop is no longer attacking the pawn, so it would kind of solve his problem. But not doing that, I still have the ability to play here. So he stops that. Okay, so now let's kick that bishop. Okay, now he can't he can't bring the bishop back here and harass my rook, so I get to stay here this time. Okay, let's think about this. He's threatening this pawn, which is defended by the knight, but I'm planning to use the knight to take here. So I take here. If he takes the pawn, I can take his knight with check. Win another pawn there. So I take here, knight takes, bishop takes. Let's just defend the pawn. This just loses the pawn. Oh, I see. Then it doesn't just lose it. He's actually going to take here when I take there. Very clever. Do I have an intermediate move? I don't see it. Would I rather end up with a bishop or a knight? Good question. Probably for simplicity's sake, end up with the bishop. So I take, he takes. It's better to get the center pawn, I guess. He could have taken this way. Maybe we'll check that out after the game. This is the line I saw. I thought he would take here, take my bishop, but he had a discovered attack on my bishop. Okay, so let's attack his bishop and then attack his pawn over here. Now the king has one extra flight square, so I don't have to worry so much about the check on the back rank. I can run here. So let's just take this pawn. Let's drop back to where I'm defended here. Okay, I'm going to start by covering this escape square here for the king. So introduce some back rank threats. I want to make sure the bishop stays protected. Yeah, let's exchange off the rooks. Just the less force he has, the less likely it is that I'll walk into some kind of tricky mate or something. So with the extra pawn, he's going to try and win that extra pawn, huh? Go here, the bishop can take it. Okay, we'll start by going here. I may have given up a pawn for no reason. But this is good. I'll just oh, that was bad. Oh, I just moved too quickly that time. I still have a good advantage, a good chances this game because queen and an isolated pawn far from the king. The queen is very good at helping this pawn make progress, as you can see. And his pawns, although he outnumbers me 3-1 on this side of the board, it's very difficult. Okay, so if I were to check here, he takes, I take, the king steps over. So I don't check, I step in like this. So in spite of my blunder, I think I win here. And he gave up. Okay, there were a couple things I was interested in looking at in the analysis, mostly towards the end there. First one was, before my silly mistake, was this as good a position as I thought? Let's just look at it from here. +2, and I should go here or there. And it's gradually increasing. I think, yeah, the value will go up over time. And then, was I ever losing after this? That was the next question. Oh, sorry, I started following a line that wasn't played. So +3, I blunder, and now it's even. So he could have drawn. Yeah, I thought maybe he should just draw, go for a perpetual check. He didn't. He was maybe thinking of winning. He can actually win now because the king is close enough to stop the pawn. Yeah, that's very important. King position was rules there, so he could actually have won at that point, but he didn't play that. And then after this, it's still a draw, but now I start to get the advantage. This is still a draw if he brings his queen out, huh? Probably because he can start giving perpetual checks even if I queen. But he gave up at this point. So that was it. Yeah. So I was winning, and yeah, I just made a silly blunder and gave it all away. It wasn't so bad that I lost a pawn, but let's see. And then I thought there was some other point I wanted to look at. Key one. I don't know. He gives me an advantage all through here. Ah, it says I could have just directly taken here. Oh, yeah, I don't know why. I was still thinking about pushing this pawn, which he had kind of stopped with this rook move, but I can just take the pawn. Okay, that was kind of silly. Let's see. Well, let's look at this graph here. Looks like there was this place where he had another opportunity to draw. This move was a mistake, and he could come down here and check. He could get a draw by playing rook a8. Oh no, what's this? I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding what it's saying here. After this, he can get a draw by playing queen c1. Okay, that still keeps the draw. And then queen c7 was a mistake. How does he continue to get the draw here? He would have to play rook to d2. Ah, yeah, I did notice this. He could also bring the rook down. And I guess he's got enough pressure here to force a draw. I can't defend this pawn. Yeah, and so anyway, that's even. Let's see, is there any other interesting points in this graph? Looks like somewhere near the beginning I had some kind of option here to do a little better. Okay, it says after he plays this move, then I have a good move in when I just brought the knight out. Isn't that good enough? Yeah, no, bringing the knight out is a good move. Okay. And then he played this, and then I should just take his knight, it says. That's interesting. Didn't particularly care for this idea, letting him trade bishops. So if I take the knight, let's see what the idea is here. He takes back with the queen, so he doesn't mess up his pawns. Oh, the idea is to win a pawn, because now if he pins it, I can escape by taking his queen, and also it's taken with check, so I don't have to worry about the pin. And so, yeah, I just have dragged the queen away from defense of the pawn. Okay, so that would have been the simplest way to get an advantage early on. So I didn't do that, and then at this point, he starts to give me the advantage again. What did he play here? Oh, I'm sorry. We were wandered away from the actual game. Let's go forward again, using the real game instead of the whatever line the computer made up there. So in the real game, we played this way up to this point, and it looks like here he made another mistake. Oh yeah, because he gave up the pawn. And then after that, I had that advantage, except for giving him a couple of opportunities to draw or win near the end when we were, well, he was low on time. I still had time to think about it, but I was moving too quickly. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Bye now.